Hey everyone, welcome back to the show. I'm super excited to have an incredible entrepreneur with me today who's overcome quite a few setbacks and found her success in the world of storytelling. Sheryl Green is a native of New York who now calls Las Vegas home, where she has made a name for herself as a nonfiction book author. After experiencing a devastating divorce, Sheryl discovered the power of storytelling and now uses it to help others overcome their own obstacles. She's the author of 4 books, including Surviving to Thriving, How to Overcome Setbacks and Rock Your Life, and Book Writing for Busy People. And she now has a new book coming out in the spring of 2023 called Living Unleashed, How Setting Boundaries Sets You Free. Sheryl holds a master's degree in psychology and has worked in the world of customer service, public relations, education, and a real passion for her is in the nonprofit world. Sheryl Green, good to see you. Welcome back to the MindShift Podcast.
Thank you so much, Darrell. I'm excited to be here.
I want to let the audience know we know each other. Like, this isn't just, we didn't just meet each other on one of these podcast connections. Tell everyone a little bit about you.
So I have been writing for about 15 years now. Started out with fiction. So while I've moved into the nonfiction space, my very first book was a serial killer novel, but it was a funny serial killer novel that I actually started writing as really a therapeutic and cathartic process going through my divorce. And I found out that it's really great to write mystery novels when you're angry because you get to kill anybody that you want. So it was a good start to my writing career. And shortly after that, I had people asking, can you write my bio for me? Can you edit this? Can you do this for me? And that's when I realized that writing is actually a skill and it's not something that everybody can do. And trust me, there are plenty of skills that I cannot do. Ask my fiance to watch me throw a ball. Not good. But writing was something that I got really good at. And I've actually been working with Yoka Local for, I don't even know, 8 years now, something like that, writing some of the content. So we've known each other a while.
Yeah. Thank you so much, too, for spending so many years working with our content team. You've been such a steady, reliable, expert resource in our content development for our clients. And so I just want to thank you publicly for that. I thank you offline as well. But thank you for just being a part of our resource team and your incredible work. So what originally got you started with writing? Was the trigger the divorce, or were you always interested in writing?
The trigger was the divorce. I've always been interested in reading, but really didn't try my hand at writing until I moved out to Vegas and I took a novel writing class. And it was at, UNLV, one of the local colleges. And the professor was phenomenal. And he really got the creative juices flowing. And like I said, it was really good for the soul to be able to kill some characters that, that may or may not have reflected someone I knew in real life.
Right.
But it wasn't until I decided to be a speaker that I had people say to me, well, you need to write a book if you're going to be a speaker. And at this point, I had 3 novels under my belt and said, well, okay, that's not actually that hard. I can do that. I can write a book. And sat down to talk about resiliency and to talk about the challenges that I've been through and how what I've learned could really help others. And that's where Surviving to Thriving came from. Mm-hmm. From there, it has just been a whirlwind of what knowledge do I have to share with the world and how can I really make it a better place?
I love that. Let's talk about the book Surviving to Thriving and that season that you navigated through. The MindShift Podcast is about the journey from inspiration to realization and when life knocks us down, from breakdown to breakthrough. share with our audience 2 or 3 keys from, to go from surviving to thriving that you've learned to master through that period of your life.
I have to say the biggest one, and it's going to sound a little weird because when we talk about my newest book, I'm going to kind of go the opposite direction for a moment. But the biggest thing that helped me going through the divorce, or I went through a divorce, sorry, I should mention that. Ex did a bad thing, we'll leave it at that, and moved out to Vegas, went through the divorce, the losing the house, the walking away from the job, the bankruptcy, and the ensuing depression. So the biggest thing that I walked away with is go help someone else. When you feel like all hope is lost and there's nothing you can do to possibly get yourself out of depression or out of whatever situation you're in, my answer was go help someone else. And I found those someones in animals. I have always been a huge animal lover, and I got involved in rescue. And I found that for every animal's life I saved, they saved me right back.
Wow. Yeah, I knew you did a lot of work in nonprofit, and I've followed your Facebook, and again, we're connected through the agency, but I never thought about the reason why. Like, you just don't know. Like, I've grown up a dog lover, for example, and it's my thing, but I've never understood. I would have never guessed that was your reasoning. So in this time of your turmoil, emotional, challenge, you found healing in helping others, in this case, animals.
I did.
What do you think was the reason that connection or disconnection? Was it a disconnection from your own reality or taking focus off of self? What was it about that even led you to that?
There's actually a few, I think, benefits that come from it. I will say what led me to it was that rock bottom moment that we all hit at some point in our lives. And mine was just curled up on the fetal position in the bathroom. And I was living with my parents at the time. My stepmom came in to find me just in tears, couldn't get up, honestly didn't really care if I did. And she was the one that pulled me off the floor and said, it's time to go help someone else. And, started out small. I just went to a couple of events and helped out there. And then I started putting on my own events and got more involved from that. But I think what I realized about it is, aside from the perspective, and that almost sounds a little bit bad, but when you see how challenging other people's or other creatures' lives are, yours doesn't look as bad often. And so having that perspective and seeing what else is out there and finding the gratitude in, okay, I'm here and it's kind of sucky right now, but it could be a lot worse.
Yeah.
So that was one aspect of it. The other one was having a purpose. When you're in the middle of a depression, it doesn't feel like there's any reason for you to be there. It doesn't feel like you belong on this planet, like it matters if you get up in the morning. And some days you just don't. Some days you just stay in bed. And realizing that I was making a difference, that I was actually here for something, and that living beings were benefiting from me being here, was huge. So huge.
That's so incredible. The interesting thing is my mind is racing to how sometimes selfish we can be, thinking that woe is me. And it doesn't mean to belittle our circumstance. Our circumstance is our circumstance, and the feeling of that circumstance is real. But it's interesting when you take your eyes off of you, how quickly and easily you can find someone that's further down the road in much more pain or worse off circumstance. And so you were able to honor that perspective, and good thing for your stepmom walking in, and helping you see a new light, see a new vision. So That's incredible. Your new book. Let's jump right into your new book, because you said you maybe have taken a slightly different perspective. And listen, I think when you're in a season, you have a perspective, and it doesn't mean your perspective can't change.
Right.
Talk about the new book, and what are we going to learn about? What are we going to hear about in Living Unleashed?
Mm-hmm.
How setting boundaries will set you free.
So I have to say that I actually tweaked the title a little bit since we spoke last. So it is now How Setting Healthy Boundaries Sets You Free. Because as it turns out, we all have boundaries to some degree. They're just not all so good. So
Right. Okay.
But yeah, so I realized, and this is probably about a year in the making. Last December, or 2 Decembers ago, I hit a wall. I had been working for the rescue, or working with the rescue, for almost 10 years at that point. And I had allowed it to become not only my identity, but this all-consuming, all energy and time-consuming beast in my life, for lack of a better way to put that. And November was rough. November was crying constantly, like even more than I normally do, which is a lot. And December was terrifying. I was driving down the road one day and just running an errand for work. And I had this thought. I saw the oncoming traffic lights, the oncoming cars. And I thought, if I just crossed over the median,
Ooh.
This could be over like that. And it definitely jarred me. One, I would never, ever want to hurt somebody else. But two, what the heck was I talking about? And, even when I was going through that depression back after my divorce, I had never considered self-harm. And this was like a whole new level of terrifying for me. And I pulled over, I calmed myself down, and I realized that something major was going on in my life and something needed to change. And I took the month of December off to really work on my mental health and make sure that I made it to the next year. Mm-hmm. But that wasn't actually what kicked me into this boundary journey. It was a few months later. I was no longer with the rescue, and a friend of mine asked me to serve on the board of one of our local organizations. And I'm a server. I do that. I jump in, I help wherever I can. I love being on boards. I love volunteering. It's what I do. But as soon as I said yes, this dread started creeping in. And, at this point, I was already engaged at that point. So I knew I had a wedding coming up. I'm building this business and trying to make my way in the world. And I just agreed to give up more time. Yeah. And I sat with it for a while, and I freaked out for a while. Spoke to a couple of mentors, and, really got the response that it wouldn't be so bad for me to say I can't do it right now. It would be bad for me to go through all the training, spend the year learning, spend the year doing, and then say that I can't do it when it's time for me to become president.
Yeah.
And I really took that to heart. And I was sitting on an airplane, my Kindle broke. And I don't know if anybody listening to this just had this like moment, but
I know the pain.
Oh my God, I had to like sit with my own thoughts.
Right. Yeah, we're going to have an in-air emergency.
Terrible. Like I'm ready to, pull the door open. But it made me realize that one, I was stepping into something I shouldn't be stepping into. And I went through the why. And I was like, you know what? These are those boundaries, those pesky boundaries that I've read about, but I don't seem to have any. And I need to say no to the opportunity. I need to learn about boundaries, and then I need to write a book. And by the end of the flight, I had the book about 50-60% outlined.
Wow. Wow. So you turned a moment of panic, a moment of a revelation that wasn't, it didn't feel good. And you said, this is, I need to step out of this and make sure that this is not only beneficial for you, but also the world, because you realize that in your heart of service, it's interesting. In your heart of service, you found yourself overextended.
Yes, very much
And
so.
it's interesting because I think, we always talk about heart-centered leadership and servant leadership. And I think that term has been around for a couple of decades now. And it does. Sometimes it can go too far because we sometimes are so willing to sort of get the joy of helping others, and sometimes don't take time to realize that we're out of balance, right? I love the quote, and I hope I get it right on the spot because I don't just script this stuff out. But it says to the people that specifically that are always giving, that are always serving, that are always leading, that are always volunteering, is you can't pour from an empty cup. Yeah. And it's interesting that we have to set these boundaries and give ourselves time, space, grace to just be. And it doesn't take away. I actually know, Sheryl, very firsthand, the feeling that you were going through and that you're describing from a different context. But if I ever get around to writing a book, this one could be an interesting. And I've literally said this more times than I can think, and that is, there's power in the word no.
Yes.
And it's not because you didn't want to. And it's because if you said yes, it would compromise your ability to be great in what you've already committed to. Mm-hmm. Anyway, I look forward to hearing more about that book, and congratulations. I got to dive right in. You've written 4 books. You've been in the space now of writing for 15 years. Many people, me, would say writing a book just seems daunting in and of itself. How have you developed the art, the skill, the science of producing books, not just for yourself, but over the years you have coached some folks, and you and I had a lunch probably 3-4 years ago, maybe 5. And you gave me some advice on writing a book, which I did not. I took the advice. I didn't execute. So full disclosure, full transparency, listening audience. Yeah, you have not scanned Amazon and found a book by Darrell Evans yet. Keyword yet. Coming soon. But talk to us about the art, the science of writing a book. And I want to even go a little deeper and maybe have you help our audience who may be aspiring to write something. How do they think through it? How do they, how would they get from blank screen to something published? But let's start first with your methodology.
So I started, as I said, with fiction, and the very first book I wrote took me almost 4 years. That book is gathering, somebody said this yesterday, gathering virtual dust, sitting on my hard drive. I never ended up publishing it. It never got to the point where I was ready to release it to the world. And now that I look back at it, I'm like, okay, I could do a better job on that. But that was the first one. By the third novel, I was down to 45 days. Yeah. So
wow.
There is a thing called NaNoWriMo. And for anybody who does want to write fiction, this is a really good program, event, I don't know what to call it, to get behind. But it's National Novel Writing Month. And that is November every year. There are write-ins, there's support, there are, I think, even courses, there's contests, there's all these things that you can get involved in, and you outline, or at least I outlined. And I remember it was October 31st, and all my friends were, out at the clubs, and they were doing the Halloween thing and drinking and dressed up. And I was sitting on my living room floor with one light on because I didn't want the trick-or-treaters to see me. Sorry, kids. And I was sprawled out on the floor with a bunch of index cards outlining my book. I had, created all these scenes, and I knew where I wanted to start and where I wanted to go. And I was organizing. And what that did is when I sat down November 1st, I knew exactly what I was going to write. I didn't know how it was going to come out, but I knew exactly what I was going to write. I knew where the book was going. And every day when I finished writing, I would look at I was still on index cards at the time. I would look at my index card and say, okay, tomorrow I'm going to write this scene. And then everything I did during that day, whether I was walking the dog, taking a shower, washing dishes, I was thinking, that idea was percolating in my head, so that when I sat down the next day, sorry for the graphic image here, I just kind of vomited out the content. Like, it was already ready to go, and I just had to sit down and type. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges that anybody makes. In the writing world, there's two types of people. There's outliners and there's seat of the pantsters. And those seat of the pantsters are the ones that go, I'm just going to sit down and see what comes out. I don't know what the story is going to be. I don't know where it's going to end. And that gives me so much anxiety. And I don't know how anybody ever finishes a book. And I know they do. The same process doesn't work for everyone. But I don't get it. I just don't get it. So I am a huge proponent of outlining. I do it for myself, and I'll tell you about the most recent outline that I did. And when I work with my coaching clients, I have them do it. Because if you don't know where you're going and you don't know what steps you're going to take along the way, you're going to get stuck.
Yeah. So let's talk about outlining, and let's talk about structure, because I remember our lunch, and I'm pretty sure I have the notes because you ended up sending them to me electronically, and I know I have it because I put it in my little archive box for the day when I wanted to sit down and get started with this thing. Talk to us about the structure of an outline. I know that may seem rudimentary to some, but for someone who's never done it and someone who feels like they've got something they want to share, talk to us about the structure of an outline. What goes in it? What doesn't go in it? How do you help someone make it easy to get it done?
So, okay, from here, I'm actually going to switch over from fiction to nonfiction, because they are
Perfect.
completely different worlds, and
Okay.
I don't live in the fiction world anymore.
I see.
If
Okay, perfect.
somebody is writing fiction, there is a book called Save the Cat from Blake Snyder, and I highly recommend you get that. It breaks a story, a novel, or a screenplay down into beats. These are the high points. These are the low points. This is where the conflict comes in. All of that stuff. Study that. Go take some classes. Like, that's your world now. I'm going to get out of that, because as much as I would love to publish that first novel, it's not going to happen anytime soon. So, all of that being said, if you are working on nonfiction, the easiest way to do this is really a 3-part structure, just like a three act structure in a play. But in the beginning, you're going to talk about what the problem is. Okay, what is your audience facing? What is your reader? What's keeping them up at night? What's their pain points? Just like we do in marketing. And then giving them the confidence that you understand their problem, that you are equipped to help fix it, and really that you've got their hand through the journey. So that first part is about identifying the problem and then giving a broad solution, giving an overview, trying to think of an analogy here, but just what is the 10,000 foot view of what's going to fix their problem. Mm-hmm. So you've got that section there. Your second section is the meat and potatoes of the book, or the tofu and vegetables for our vegan friends. It's the bulk of the book, and that's your process. That's what are the specific things that are going to provide the solution. And there's a couple of different ways to do that. As for some people, it is a do this, then this process. And that's sort of how I structured this last book. But you can also have more of a loose, there are 10 different things or 12 different things that can fix your problem, and, take the Chinese menu approach to it. And that's what I do with Surviving to Thriving. There's going to be some chapters in there that you're going to look at and be like, this isn't me. I'm not going to do this. This doesn't work. And that's okay, because there's 10 other chapters that you're going to look at and go, oh, this is a really good suggestion. I'm going to try that. So different ways to structure it. If you want to be real crazy and really creative, you can think about, what was it, The Alchemist, which was actually kind of nonfiction and kind of giving you instructions for life. There you go. But it was all done as a story. And you're learning this as you're going through this flow. So there's different ways to handle it, but when you're looking at getting your ideas into the world, maybe you don't consider yourself a writer. There's nothing wrong with going one of the easier routes. As long as your content is solid and you've got the desire to help people with what you're sharing, don't make it so hard that you never get your book done.
I love it. So, how do we finish the book? So we started with the problem. I heard state the problem, empathize with them, let them know you can get them to the solution, and then move into the process, which is going to be the bulk of the book. And then how do we close the book?
So the closing is going to be, one, are there other ways that you can help them? Okay, so you want to mention if you're a speaker, if you're a coach or a consultant, if you're an accountant and you wrote a book about accounting, and my goodness, I'm so sorry to the accountants, but that does not sound exciting for me. But you're going to give them, you're going to seed throughout, but you're also going to give them at the end, like, hey, you know what? If you need some extra help, I'm here. This is what I do. You don't have to be alone. And you're also going to kind of reflect back on what you taught them. And, in a lot of cases, things are going to go wrong. There's going to be, that journey is not just A to Z and woohoo, we're smooth sailing through there. So what do they do when challenges pop up? What's going to happen when they do have a problem? And how are they going to look at it? How are they going to identify if they've been successful? What are those KPIs for that specific issue? So it's a wrap up, but it's a look back and a look forward at the same time.
Gotcha. So I stepped down and I had to pick up one of your other books, which I'm holding, Once Upon a Bottom Line, Harnessing the Power of Storytelling in Sales. And then you've also written a book writing for busy people. I sat in the seminar that you gave when you gave us a copy of these books, and just for full disclosure, I probably got rid of about 150 books over the holidays just because I was truncating space, and I just realized some of these books are either digitized now or I just don't need them. And I did keep your book. Thank you.
Oh, warm fuzzies. Thank you.
Well, if I know you, I'm keeping it. So I didn't know some of those other folks. They were helpful, but I didn't know them. Let's talk about storytelling to kind of wrap up, and maybe even touch on, and I don't know if maybe we just did, book writing for busy people. I'm a busy person.
Yep.
I know you personally. Yep. I actually had a consultation with you and I still didn't write a doggone book. So let's go to storytelling, because that's really the power of what you found that's been the thrust of your momentum. Why is storytelling so essential?
Emotion. Just one word right there. Emotion. Storytelling connects us to one another. Whether you are selling ideas, whether you are selling products, or whether you are selling a belief to yourself. And that is where those boundaries come in. storytelling evokes emotion when you do it properly. And you need that. You need that to sell absolutely anything, because as much as we want to say, I'm a logical person and I think through my decisions before I make them, and, all of these things that we want to say, no, I don't decide from an emotional place. It's all wrong. It's just all wrong. And you'll have to excuse me because I don't remember the exact number, but I think it was 95% of our buying decisions are made subconsciously. And I used the example in the storytelling book where, you're standing in line, or you're standing in the supermarket and you're looking at toilet paper. And I wrote this before toilet paper had its heyday during COVID. But, we're looking at the different brands and we're like, well, okay, we're comparing price in our head and we're breaking it down. If you were taught to do that, this is how much it is per square inch and this is how much it is per potty visit or whatever. And you think that you're making a decision from that space, but you're not. You're actually looking at it, and whether it's conscious like me or unconscious like some others, you're going, oh, look, a bear. I remember that bear. He was in the woods and he's keeping his fur clean, and that's very important, and that makes me feel warm and fuzzy and laugh inside. And that's where those decisions are coming from. So whether you have a physical brand or just your own personal brand, you have to evoke emotion in people or you're just going to fall flat on your face.
Okay. Got to go there.
Yeah.
I just have to go, because here's the thing. Help me tell a good story. What are the pieces of telling a good story? How do I start? Because it almost sounds like maybe it's similar to what you kind of outlined with the way you do a book. But how does someone tell a good story if they don't deem themselves good storytellers? Sometimes we're good talkers. Sometimes we're good speakers. Sometimes we're good presenters.
Yeah.
But how do we tell good stories?
So there's 9 elements, and I'm not sure this is the place to go through each one of them. However, I will say, first of all, vulnerability. And I know that is not what you expected to hear when it comes to, marketing a product or something, but being willing, yeah, that was English, to share of yourself and of your experiences actually gives other people permission to share themselves and to get involved in it. So keep that in mind, that vulnerability is always a necessary element. But I will say, when it comes to starting, actually, I'll just give you the overview of storytelling. You have to start in one place. You have to finish in a different place. And your character needs to experience a change during this journey. And it's called a character arc when you're being specific with it. But I use Finding Nemo to teach that storytelling workshop. One, because it's an amazing example of storytelling. And 2, because it's really fun to watch business owners sit down and watch a Pixar movie. But it's what has changed, because we all have emotions and we want to tap into those. So what is the challenge that the character, and I say character instead of person, because Pixar has shown us this. It can be animals, it can be furniture, anything, as long as they have human emotions, anybody can be your character. What's the problem that they're facing? What do they want to get by the end of the story, the book, the movie, whatever? And what's standing in their way? If there's no goal and there's nothing standing in their way, you don't have a story. You're just kind of reporting events as they happened, and it's really dull. We need to know, what are they shooting for and what's going to get in their way? Is it poor boundaries? Is it a lack of money. You know, how many stories have been written about like rags to riches, these people that have to overcome these amazing circumstances of homelessness and food insecurity and lack of education and all of these other things so that they can reach their goals. And I would say those are the two most important things when it comes to storytelling, is having a goal and having something standing in the way of it. And I will add one more thing if you are doing storytelling for business, for any purpose other than entertainment, and that's have a good reason that you're telling the story. People are busy, and unless they are expecting to be entertained and coming to you for that sole purpose, there better be a reason why you're telling them that story, and wasting the 2 to 10 minutes of their lives. Don't ever make it 10 minutes. But have a reason for sharing that, and have something that they need to do afterwards, or that they're called to do.
Gotcha. Wow. I appreciate that. No. So it was interesting, right? So you said, you're back to, again, identify the problem. Mm-hmm. What's the problem? What do they actually want, which makes it a problem in the first place? And what's standing in their way, right? And we do think about that from really any good marketing is doing the same thing. And of course, there isn't marketing without content and writing and story and arc and some of those things. Yeah. And I think here's one I want to, and again, I love the part of don't tell the story unless there's a purpose. Like, in other words, where are we going to go from and to? It's like a journey, right? Take them on a journey. I think they call that the hero's journey or something like that, right? And that isn't that it's called that for a reason, yeah, obviously. Your other book, and just to touch on it briefly as we get ready to wrap up, Book Writing for Busy People, or sorry, is that the title? I didn't have that one right in front of me.
Only short one I've ever written.
Okay, what's the hidden secret? What's the hidden secret for busy people? And let me describe busy. I'm a time blocker on my calendar. If I have to do it, it's on my calendar 94% of the time. There's a 6% window where it might end up on a text note or a piece of paper, but typically I don't function if it's not on the calendar. What is the secret to book writing for busy people?
So aside from outlining, which truly cannot really pound that point home enough, aside from that, it's actually knowing your own boundaries and establishing them and saying, this is the time that I write. And that's both for yourself and for other people. Right when we hopped onto this call, I was putting my phone on Do Not Disturb. And I have to say that is probably the best invention that has ever come out of anywhere, is the ability to say, I am not focused on the outside world right now. I'm focused on writing. And my fiance, who will be my husband by the time this airs, he knows that when I go into writing mode, he does not disturb. He does not knock on the door unless there is something severely wrong with the dogs or with him. It can wait. And I block off, 45 minutes, an hour, 2 hours, whatever I can do and whatever you can do with your schedule. Block that off, put it on your calendar, because if it doesn't end up there, you're not going to be like, oh, I have half an hour free to myself. Let me sit down and really dial in on my book. It's not going to happen.
Never going to happen. Yeah.
So schedule it and then tune out the outside world, and you will get finished. And hire a book writing coach who will make sure you get finished.
And I wonder if you might know one.
I might. I just might.
Tell everybody about that. Where can people find you? How are you helping people?
Yeah, so you can go to, I have 3 websites now. They all interconnect. So, but if you're looking for book, I'll say that over. If you're looking for book coaching, go to unleashedcommunications.com. You'll find all the information there. And I do book coaching and ghostwriting. And can I plug the free download? Is that okay?
Absolutely. absolutely.
Okay. So one of the biggest questions I've been asked during this boundary journey that I've been on has been, how do I say no? It is terrifying for people. And once we get to the point where you know you're allowed to, and if you're listening to this now, you are allowed to say no. It's okay, it's acceptable, and it's actually preferable. But once we get past that point, the question becomes, how do I say no? And so I created a cheat sheet that gives you 4 different ways to approach your response. And one of them is yes, and that's okay if that's what you want. But it's just like a quick at a glance thing so that when you're in the moment, you can be like, okay, hold on. I need my 30-second break in here and let me refer to my cheat sheet. So if anybody is interested in that, that is at livingunleashednow.com.
Awesome. Awesome. Sheryl, congratulations on your journey. Life shows up and does things to us and happens to us. And some people, I just think back to the beginning story of just, where things were and how a split second could have changed the fact that we could have been here today. And so I honor your strength and your willingness to question the way you were thinking in that moment. And that would lead you on this journey to not just write the 4 books, but to do all of the work that you've done in the nonprofit world, to have that encounter with your stepmom, I think it was, who said, hey, go do something for someone else. And for the willingness to even go through just what it was a couple of years ago when you were having, you hit the wall, as you described it. So you are incredibly gifted. You're smart. You're dedicated. It's not easy. Like you said, you were on a plane and could have easily had a fit when your Kindle died. And instead you decided to turn that time into a productive, 50, 60% of a book outline done while you're on flight. It just says and speaks to the heart of your character and really the human capability, right? We always have choices. At the end of the day, we have choices, and you've made some, it isn't that pain didn't come. It isn't that despair didn't set in. It isn't that the mental health aspects weren't challenging, but you pressed through, you persevered through. So I want to honor you for that. Thank you for your work and your gifts to the world. Thank you for the work with our agency. As you stated at the beginning, over the last 8 years, it's been absolutely a pleasure working with you. Congratulations on the marriage upcoming to you and your husband to be. And we will make sure we're linking up everywhere that you mentioned. So unleashedconnections.com. And say, let's say that again, Leah. We will link up everywhere where you can be found, unleashedcommunications.com, and say the other domain for us where they can.
Yep. The other one is livingunleashednow.com.
Awesome. For those listening, you can get the full show notes of this episode over at darrellevans.net. Click on the blog tab and look for this episode. Sheryl, thank you for being here today. I always ask my guests one final question. And if today happened to be the last day you could serve, because that's what you do on this planet, what would you want everyone to remember you for?
It's okay to say no, and it's okay to give of yourself instead of giving up yourself.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Well, MindShift Podcast listeners, thank you for hanging out with us today on the MindShift Podcast. If we have never had a chance to meet, I'm Darrell Evans. I'm the host of the show. I'm the CEO and founder of the MindShift Business Academy and the CEO, co-founder of Yoga Local. You can find out more about me at Darrell Evans. If you've enjoyed today's episode, be sure to hit the follow button. Make sure you never miss an episode. And if this episode, you feel it means something to someone else or would help someone else, please share it and let them take a listen. We'll see you next time on the MindShift Podcast. All right, listening audience, if you have enjoyed today's episode and we have never had a chance to meet, I'm Darrell Evans. I'm the founder and CEO of MindShift Coaching, the CEO of Yoga Local. And if there's anything we can do to help you, be sure to leave us a comment wherever you're listening to this show. Be sure to follow, hit subscribe. And if this was inspiring to someone that you think could benefit from it, be sure to hit the share button and make sure they take a listen. We'll see you again on another episode of the MindShift Podcast. Take care. Hey, it's Darrell Evans. Hit the subscribe button so you can become a part of the MindShift community. We'll help you shift your mind so you can shift your results.